Okay. All right, well, welcome to our monthly Extension Master Gardener Coordinator discussion. And today we're going to have some brief announcements, then we'll go into the presentation with Wayne and we'll do a wrap-up. So for some of our announcements, just letting you all know that recently some of our Master Gardeners have received emails and even coordinators have received emails asking volunteers to join a registry, and a few emails were sent out about this from coordinators and also the Extension Master Gardener National Committee. But the emails are not endorsed by Extension, so just let your volunteers know that if they do get a suspicious email to be aware that it's not something that's promoted by Extension, and to make sure that they are safe when they're using the computer. Also, John Orrick sent out the e-news blast recently. The e-news blast for December is full of great information, so I encourage everyone to go back and take the time to reread it. I'll talk to you about some of the highlights. First of all, the National Committee, the Extension Master Gardener National Committee, is doing a SWOT analysis, and Pam Bennett has been coordinating part of that. All of us may have received an email link to a survey, and they're requesting that we complete the SWOT analysis, what works, what doesn't work, what can we do better with the National Committee, to complete that by December 24th. And I don't know if anyone is on the call and wants to chime in about that, but if you could go back to the EMG e-news blast and take a look at that and complete that survey by the 24th of December.
Nicole?
Yes.
This is Pam. I am going to send that link out again today. It is to the 24th, but if you do it next week, as long as I can have it pulled by January 2nd, we would really appreciate that input and that feedback.
Okay, fantastic. All right, also in the e-news blast, John Orrick mentioned some of the upcoming conferences. So in 2019, we have the National Extension Master Gardener Coordinator Conference. That will be September 14th through 16th in Knoxville, Tennessee. There's also a Facebook group that's been promoting the conference, so you're welcome to join that. And the International Master Gardener Conference will take place in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, June 17th through 21st. Pay attention to the e-news blast because there will be a poster showcase with information coming out in January of 2019. So that could benefit coordinators, and you may want to be involved with the poster showcase. Also, there's another survey for the National Initiative for Consumer Horticulture, or NICH. That's included in the e-news blast, so if you could complete that survey, that would be helpful as well. And I put a link in the chat box. There is a subcommittee of the Extension Master Gardener Coordinator National Committee for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and they are looking for ideas on how we as coordinators have implemented programs or initiatives or strategies to increase or identify ways to improve diversity, equity, inclusion in our programs. So if you have any ideas that you would like to share, maybe about what works and what doesn't in your county, go on that link that's included in the chat box or in the e-news blast and help them out with that information. All right, any other announcements? Okay. All right, hearing none, we'll move on. So Pam, who you just heard, is going to give our January presentation on getting ahead by letting go. For 2018, we had some great webinars this year. We had a webinar on visioning sessions, citizen science, and the Bee Project in Oregon. The updates on the Extension Master Gardener Resource Repository, which they still need volunteer reviewers, so contact them if you're interested in that role. We learned about motivations of Extension Master Gardener volunteers, ways to increase retention, and results of a communication survey, as well as the impact and evaluation work group. So for 2019, we are working on scheduling webinars, and if any of you are interested in presenting, please give me a call or send me an email and let me know what topic you're interested in. And Pam, I see that, and I'll follow up with you after the webinar about doing niche in February. Some of the ones that we have scheduled in the topics for 2019, which I hope that you guys will tune in as well: volunteer recognition and appreciation, help desk training classes, so how do you better prepare volunteers for working at the help desk, We're going to learn about demonstration gardens and home garden variety trials and how to get volunteers to help with those kinds of projects. We'll have an update to the EMG resource repository and even thinking about competencies that we need as volunteer coordinators to successfully lead Master Gardener volunteers. So those are some of our ideas for 2019. If you have any ideas, please type them in the chat box, ideas for speakers that I could contact, or if you yourself want to present, feel free to send me an email and we'll get you on the schedule. Okay, so if you have ideas, put them in the chat box. Otherwise, we're going to move into what state are you from? So please let us know so we can see where everyone is calling in from today.
Jan Zientek from Rutgers in New Jersey.
Hi there, how are you?
Very well.
Welcome. All right, so we have a lot of folks on the call today. We have 36 people on the call. So Connecticut, Kansas, Washington, we've got Florida, Ohio, Maryland, Arizona, Virginia, Kentucky, Georgia, Oregon, North Carolina, Tennessee, Vermont, New Jersey, welcome again. All kinds of folks. All right, very good. That's a pretty diverse group of people. All right. And today we're going to introduce Wayne Hobbs. Wayne Hobbs is a colleague of mine here at the University of Florida, but he's going to speak with us about lessons learned from an online extension gardening course. And the reason why I thought Wayne would give a great presentation, and he and I were chatting about this before we started the webinar, is that you go to extension presentations and you hear how great folks their programs are and the number of people that they taught or who they reached. But for me, I always find it interesting to learn about the process, and I find it almost as equally important to know what worked and what didn't, and how can that information help me to do better programs and lead to best practices in the future. And so I know Wayne is going to share some of that information. Also, many of us may have implemented some type of online course or training in our plan of work for next year. So I hope that you'll find this interesting, and feel free to ask Wayne if you have any questions. So with that being said, Wayne, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Nicole said, my name's Wayne Hobbs. I am an extension agent in Clay County, Florida. And basically, this all started going on the presentation. So basically what this all started from was I moved to Clay County, Florida from Delaware. I was an ag teacher for 7 years. I'm not sure why it's skipping ahead.
You're good.
But I was an ag teacher for 7 years. Actually did a lot of online education as an ag teacher through a district-wide initiative. So basically, Clay County is a very, still very rural, but up-and-coming county. We're right outside of Jacksonville in the southwest corner. So we're getting a big expressway that comes through and they're saying about 100,000 more people than 25 years. So there's an expanding population. And a lot of the people who come into the county are basically new arrivals to Florida and don't fully understand the way that horticulture is way different in North Florida than it is in almost any other part of the country. I went through the same thing moving from Delaware and finding out that all the things that I thought were weeds were now planted as lawn and things like that. So basically the county, and all this is going to put a strain on the resource. So we were looking at using ways to get information about Florida-friendly landscaping out, trying to address all the common questions we had coming from about vegetable gardening in Florida, fruit trees, and trying to get people and the new residents of the county trained on how to address their issues. So in one way I wanted to try to do this was do an online course, and it kind of lined up really well because I was a grad student at the University of Florida as well, working on my master's project, and decided this would be a good way to kind of get an idea, use some of my prior knowledge, but see how it was working in extension. There was kind of a little bit of a lack of overall research in this area that I'm going to be working on more, hopefully, in the future. Let's wait for it to... Okay. It's not advancing. Okay, so basically from this project, and was looking at some of the intended outcomes. Basically wanted to make sure people had a knowledge gain in horticulture in our area, vegetable gardening skills, Florida-friendly landscaping, trying to get people to become more active in gardening, get outside more, and also interact more with processes and not process, but the offerings we do have from Extension. So how to interact better with UF, and also some implementation of the principles of Florida-friendly landscaping. So that was overall the idea of the class, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that went well and went wrong with this, because it did not go as perfect as I was hoping. But so basically it started off, the first step I had to do was to begin working with an LMS, a learning management system. And with these, there's a lot out there. So I had to look at things with how much it cost, because some of these can be very expensive. And researching these, I started talking with other agents and specialists through the University of Florida, and found out some of their LMSs they were using were about $12,000 a year, where basically you sent the information, your presentations, to a company, and they would build it and put it out there as a prepackaged deal. Other ones were looking at it as a small charge per user basis. So I had to make sure that my cost was going to be right, because I didn't want to have to charge for this Welcome to Florida class at first. So I had to look at cost, how available it was to people, if I could get my hands on it, and also if the university would allow me to use it, making sure it was secure. I have a lot of clients who don't like to share a lot of information online. They're very wary of that issue. So I had to make sure it was something where they weren't having to share a lot of their information, things that they'd really worry about breaches and things like that, to make sure they weren't going to have those issues. Also, accessibility was huge, making sure it was something people could pick up and use, something that wouldn't require a lot of training just to be able to navigate through the site. And also making sure I was checking all the boxes of the university to make sure it was secure, that I was using the right programs, and things like that. So some options I looked at, I did initially look at Canvas, because that is what we use at the university for online classes. However, I was told with the person I talked to that basically they didn't have enough licenses, so I had to move on from that one. Now we are looking at using it extension-wide as our for the University of Florida. So we have a new version called Canvas Catalog that I'm getting trained on right now. There's also other programs such as Moodle and Edmodo. Those are more built towards K through 12. I've used those in the past and tried them a little bit with some of the free options. Moodle is excellent for a lot of things. It's very open for you to actually build what you want. Edmodo is another one that's built for teachers. That's great. Then also I did look in things like Blackboard, something more traditional, but then there's costs involved with that. And there are a lot more out there to choose from. There's a lot of companies making their own. But honestly, what I ended up setting on was Schoology. And Schoology was one, basically I had experience with it. I taught with it for about 3 years in Delaware. We went through and reviewed things like Moodle and Edmodo at that time, and decided that Schoology was a little bit easier to use, and we were also doing for districts, so their pricing structure is better. But I found that since I had experience with it in designing courses, that it would be a little bit easier to use for me. I like the accessibility of it, and also being free was a good option. So this is what Schoology looks like. I know usually the first thing I always say is when you first go on it, what does it look like? And the first thing I always get back is that it always looks like Facebook. And that was one of the reasons we ended up choosing it as teachers when we originally went through it, was because it navigated like Facebook, it acted like Facebook. So we were hoping that our students, and also myself, extension clientele, would be able to navigate it a little bit better if they are experienced with that. So this is just the main page where they show some of the things where you can put updates out to the class, give them links, navigate. I'm going to be going through some of the features of this LMS in a few minutes. So the benefits of this, there is a free version you can use. That is great. You can pay for another option, but I didn't want to go that route. It also is fairly easy to use. I found it very intuitive to upload documents, create tests and quizzes, navigate forums, things like that. I found it to be very easy, especially since it does look like Facebook. It does give a lot of good options for people who aren't used to an LMS to kind of be able to navigate around through there. And one thing I really did like about it was once you created a course, you could recopy the entire course right afterwards. It was really easy to move things from one place to another, making it so that once you built one course and wanted to run it once, when you wanted to re-upload the same class, you could do so pretty easily. And there is an app available for it. I didn't have I don't believe any of my participants in the class directly used it, but I did have students in the past who used it and really liked it. Now, there are some drawbacks, though. One thing I always ran into as a teacher and also as an agent is that basically it has issues. The video player and PDF viewer not always working in Internet Explorer, seem to work best in Chrome or Firefox. But we were able to get by that. With those people would then have to, if they still want to use Internet Explorer, they'd have to download the presentations and download the PDFs and things like that before opening them. It is designed for K through 12 use, which is just fine for a lot of reasons, but overall it isn't designed directly for extension. It isn't designed for secondary, so it can be a little more simplistic. One problem I do run into is that it's one that a lot of people haven't heard of or had experience with, so sometimes they have experience in other LMS, there can be a learning curve. And the one big drawback that I ran into this year was that they used to have really great course analytics, so you go in and see page views per day, what time of day. You could really look at when people were really accessing the course, how many logins you were getting during the class. But then about halfway through this year, I noticed that the analytics were moved from their free version to their enterprise version. So then now you have to pay to be able to use that option. So that's not as good, because now if you're working with reporting or trying to get numbers on when people are logging in, when's the best time to post things, how many people are actually viewing your materials other than just how many people are in the class, it cuts out that option. Now for course format, I met with my graduate advisor and went through and decided on what the things that we really were looking at from our advisory committee and my Master Learner Volunteer feedback of what things people were really asking when they move here, because we do get a lot of calls here. I'm new to the area. What do I do with my lawn? What do I do with my vegetable garden? I planted my tomatoes in June and they're not doing anything. Why is that? So we decided to build 4 modules in this and do a synchronous class where we were going to basically run it as 1 module per week. The reason I wanted to do that was to build in some forums, to have some discussion, to try to build more of a cohort model with the class, but have it entirely online. So I decided to make each one 1 week long. They were going to open up every Monday and then run through Sunday. And each one will contain a lecture, which is around 30 to 40 minutes, required and suggested reading. So I'd give them some required readings to look at versus also things that were, here's some other, if you're really interested in this topic, you can check this out. There are discussion boards and forums, which was one of my favorite parts of this course. People really did get some great interactions and questions through there. And also each week had an assignment to analyze their yard and try to apply the knowledge. So for example, when we went on and had a question about Florida-friendly landscaping, I had them go through and use the checklist to see how they were really matching up with Florida-friendly implementation in their yard versus our statewide checklist to get a yard certified. And then also I did put a pre and post test for the course just to get good feedback from that on what their knowledge gain was before and after. Second. Okay. So here's basically what the courses look like on the Schoology page. So there are some information here. I did make a quick introduction video on how to use Schoology, how to navigate through the site on some of the basic options. There's a lot more that the site could do that I didn't get into and use just to try to simplify that learning curve to start off. Here it shows there's a pre-test, and each module is broken out into its own folder that would then open up on a set date, and then you could access all the materials there. So if they're grayed out, that basically means they're able to log in. They're able to log in, they will see that. They will see it when it's colored or when it's a color, but when it's grayed out, it means they can't access it. And I did forget to mention with security, one of the great things about Schoology was that it flew through all of the IT security at the university, because the only thing they needed to log in with it was a username and a password. They didn't even have to give their email address, which to me is awesome for people who don't want to share a lot of information online. They don't even have to sign up for email lists coming from Schoology to update them. So if they don't like having that attachment to their information online, it really does help. So once you go into one of the folders, here's an example of one of the modules. It's broken down into presentations, readings, and assignments. And basically the presentations were it's an uploaded MP4 file. I didn't go through and upload them to any other site. But on here, they can access the video. They can also click below to download it. And then I also was able to put in the pretest. So in the pretest, it's basically you put in your questions. You can make the multiple choice, short answer, things like that. And then it will automatically grade, which is a great time savings. A lot of your LMSs will do that now. And then also the lectures go on here. So there are, here's the video that goes along with that. So you'll be able to watch the video, have that lecture information, and then move on. With all the lectures, I was able to narrate myself on PowerPoint using PowerPoint Mix. Unfortunately, that's another program that went out at some point this year. They cut the PowerPoint Mix out and added some of the features into PowerPoint, but it's not as good, so it's probably worth it to start. I'm researching other screen capture files so I can basically screen cap my presentations and use it in developing the course lectures. And here's some great things with the forums. Basically what they do is I put in a question, and then they were able to type in information, answer the questions, and respond to each other. And basically this one's all about water conservation. But we were able to go through here, and you'd start off on one question. Someone would bring up like, hey, I found out this weird thing about Florida. What can I do for this? And the questions kind of rolled through, and it was a really nice way to kind of get to know someone online without actually ever meeting them in person and answering some questions as we went along. And then we were able to do online activities. So with this, I gave them the option that if they're doing the self-assessments, if they want feedback, to go ahead and resubmit the information, and I would go back and put in comments to help them along. Now, overall, the program worked well as it was going, but I did learn some lessons, and a lot of these do come from some failures that I had through this, and I don't think you can learn without some failure, and definitely some lessons came from this. First of all, I did find out how much development was really needed to build a fully online course. When I was teaching, it was always more of a flipped classroom, so I was using a lot of pre-made information and then still supplementing it with my own lectures and things like that. So with this, I did find out that it took around 40 total hours to develop and market this course. I did have some of the presentations already finished. I just had to narrate them. Some of the activities I was retrofitting from in-person activities, so that wasn't that bad. But overall, I did have to get the learning management software cleared through UF risk assessment. I had to make sure my the computer hardware, I was having issues with that at the start because it wasn't really helping. What I had wasn't good enough to really edit the videos the way I wanted to, so I had to modify what I was doing with that. Sound quality was definitely an issue to start because I didn't have a good microphone, so I had to purchase one of those to get that because the microphone I had was cutting out and making static in the presentations. And also some things that come up too throughout Extension, a lot of times photographs being available, finding the ones that are, since this is being published, I wanted to make sure I had rights to everything, so I had to make sure to find what I really wanted or go out and take it. And time was definitely one of those things, to find the time when you're taking classes and also building your regular courses, answering questions, working with master gardeners, finding the time to really build in these and find those 40 hours can take a lot. The good news, though, is that once I got it done, it only took about an hour per week to really implement the course the first time. And the second and the third times, it actually took a lot less because I wasn't having to change things or answer a lot of questions I went through as much. So about an hour per week, which really isn't, I didn't feel was that bad for basically being almost about designed to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours of content per week that was being delivered. And I'll go through something that really could help with that in a later lesson. So what I did find was that once I put these out there and I marketed them through Facebook and local newspapers, marketed as a free class for new residents or people who want to learn how to garden in our area, basically they were very popular. The first session, we only had 8 registered, but then I saw as I kept, as I did the second and third session, the numbers really jumped up. I had 30 registered for the second and 45 for the third, which had me really, really excited because I kept seeing this grow. So they were people were really, really interested in the idea. However, when they do register, I saw commitment drop off. So for the first session, basically that one started on September 11th of last year. Basically 6 participated. So of the 8, 6 came on, 2 completed the course, and then 1 actually completed the Qualtrics survey. And with this is when the analytics was still working well. I could definitely see a trend of where the first week there was a lot of sign-ons, a lot of participation. Second week, it dropped off. I remember it was about 15 to 20%, and then after that, it really started to dive down to where we really only had a few committed people finishing the class. For sessions 2 and 3, with how many people signed up, only 10 actually went on out of those 30 and 45 people and actually went through and participated, and then knocked down to even less actually completing the course. And that was some people also were asking for extensions. So overall, there were some issues here that really led to it not being as much success as I wanted, but there is a lot to pull from that. And as I've gone through, I've decided to make some changes to try to deal with this. So what came up with discussions between myself and some of the participants and doing some more research with online learning is that basically the change of the course format could really help. So where I did a synchronous 4-week course where it took that commitment of coming every week, I probably would have had a higher completion if I'd broken it down into smaller sections. So if I just did a Florida-friendly landscaping section, or I just did a vegetable gardening section, that hour or 2 commitment then is a lot less than the 8-hour commitment over 4 weeks where things can get in the way. I did also, and also then you can space things out. The only thing is then when you do that, you lose your opportunity to do a lot of forum work and a lot of things like that where you can build discussions. And those are one of the strongest parts of the course. That's what I saw a lot of the best interaction and learning coming from, which also brings up the idea of using blended and hybrid courses, which I'm working on developing more of those, where basically we can flip the classroom, have some pre-learning where basically you send out the information through a couple of weeks before the class, have people complete it, and come to the class more prepared so that when you do have a 2-hour class in person, you can handle a lot more of the hands-on activities and the fun activities while putting more of the lecture back onto the online course. And also chunking content is big. I know now that basically when I'm doing those 30 to 40-minute lectures, it's probably better to cut them up into 3 to 5 to 10-minute chunks so people are better able to digest it, take what they can from it before moving on to the next section. Instead of pausing and coming back to it, they can just do section by section by section. It was also suggested to use more of a reward, a nice little carrot to put out on a string for completion. However, with that, I did put out that they were able to attend an in-person class for free. If they completed the course, they'd have someone take me up on that, and they have been attending a lot of in-person courses since then, but it hasn't been as much as I was hoping that would be. So if you could think of ways to offer them a free plant, or putting in like a pollinator class and have them come in and maybe get a free pollinator house after they complete it. And with giving away free things, you can also build in a charge for that. So I was told that charging for the course will definitely build in the amount that people are actually participating. If they know they have invested $10 or $20 to take this class, they're more likely to finish it. But I didn't want to do that for this version, and I wasn't sure how charging for an online class would work, because it was something that was kind of new. And when I started contacting the university, some questions about that came up. I did also find out that outside factors will definitely influence the course. So if anyone in Florida remembers what was happening around September 11, 2017, that was about, I think it's 2 days before Hurricane Irma hit, or the day of. I can't remember which one it was, but it was right at that time. So our county experienced record flood stage, 150-year level floods. So a lot of people, the participation dropped off immensely once that happened. And then a lot of people wanted to come back and take the course at a later time, things like that, because honestly, if I'm worried about my home, I'm not so worried about an online class about landscaping. The second run of the course, you did see ran through holidays, which definitely did factor in, because people definitely don't want to complete a course over between Christmas and New Year. So there was a week there where I really saw my participation almost go to zero. And then also life events happened. People did contact me and say, like, I can't complete the course. It's too much of a time commitment. I have health issues. Something happened with my family. I can't complete the class. So that did happen as well. One of the great things that come from this, I found out the benefit of actually having volunteers work with the online programming. So a couple of Master Gardeners came to me and said, well, I want to take the class to kind of brush up on some things, see how it works, see if I might want to take more online class in the future. So I let them, so they went through and registered for the course. And then I found that they were actually acting as de facto teaching assistants, where they were on there working in the lessons, basically helping with people with their activities. So I would come on at night, and usually my time to check the forums was like midnight or 1 a.m. So I'd get on there, and I'd already see that my Master Gardeners were already answering people's questions, which was great. So I was very happy with that, and I think there's a strong possibility that if you have good Master Gardeners who are somewhat computer savvy, they could go on and help with this. I'm really excited this year because I just trained a new Master Gardener who graduated my course in November, who is has experience building online courses at a college level. So I'm really excited to start working with her because she has used Canvas before and wants to build online content, which if I can have someone help me with that, that would be awesome. And finally, I did really learn that there was a lot more work that was needed with this, with future course development. I'm working on some gardening and raised beds, because whenever I do an online course for that, I'm getting a lot of people come in. So I'm trying to, an in-person course on, so I'm trying to move it to online to put that information out there, and basically to take some of my in-person education off my plate to move it more online. I'm also definitely working more into using volunteers to help guide the course, and using a different LMS is something that I'm moving towards, because we do have access to Canvas catalog, and it's kind of thought that's going to be the way the whole university is going. So I needed to make sure that I'm going that route as well. We also found out things like how we have to work with distance learning when it comes to charging for courses and funding and things like that. And also, I'm definitely looking into applying this all as a blended learning or flipped classroom situation, which I'll talk about an example of that in a minute. And I'm actually starting my PhD this spring. So my goal for that is to start off with the research, some of the perceived and actual barriers to implementing these types of classes, especially with Master Gardener volunteers. Because I do find when I talk to different agents about this, I do hear some differences in whether they think how well it would work, how well you could train a Master Gardener online or through a flipped classroom. So I want to make sure, see what types of barriers are there, what's perceived and what's actual, by also talking to the volunteers and seeing what they think, and outside clientele as well, to try to figure out how this could best, what barriers are going to be in the place so we can find ways to overcome those. And also try to find ways to implement more of the research that has happened in K through 12 and college courses, and trying to find the way they best fit into our extension audiences. So another way I have used this so far, I have put out another an asynchronous course on St. Augustine grass care. But overall, one of the more fun ways I've used this is actually my Master Gardener training class. And other agents in Florida have built online and flipped classroom situations, and we're starting to work together more on that. But so I did a hybrid Master Gardener training class because we were already doing the class, and I was like, well, I want to try to implement the online Schoology just to see how it works. So we use it as a supplement. What I did was I took all the class materials, organized them on there as a resource. People could access them wherever they wanted, all the documents. I also linked into other documents and videos that I thought would be helpful. So finding, so after they would do like plant pathology class, I would go on to YouTube and find some good videos that I could link into to show some of the processes, show some of the things we're talking about. Parasitic nematodes, I posted a lot of what they thought were very disgusting videos of how they were attacking different insects and things like that. So I was able to share that extra information, things you normally wouldn't have time for in the regular class. And we were also using forums. So with that, we were able to have people share information outside of class and talk back and forth and bring those questions in the class. And I was able to, so if they had a question on something they thought about during the week, I could address it before they came back to the class in the following week. And also one great thing, my program secretary was very happy I was able to put our 150 question pre-test all onto Schoology so that when they did the pre-test, they were able to click through it and get a grade, and the same for the post-test. So it cut back a lot of grading that we had to do there as well. So if anyone has any questions about this, how it worked, or applications of anything, questions or comments, you can contact me. My email address is the whobbs@ufl.edu, and the phone number for my office is there as well. But also the course is still active. This is one I made for anyone who was a master gardener coordinator, anyone who wanted to play around with the class to see how they liked the LMS, see how they like the navigation, things like that, or check out the content. So if you go to Schoology.com, and there is an option on the, I believe it's the upper right hand to click sign up. So you click sign up and select student, and then all you have to do is put in your name and the access code and choose a password, and then it will let you access the course and play around with it however you want, check out the content on there, see how it all works. So are there any questions?
Wayne, this is Nicole. I really appreciate you sharing the link to your online training and giving us an access code so we can kind of play around with it and see what might work for us. I had a couple of questions. I was wondering, I think you brought up some great points. So the fact that this tool kind of mirrors social media that people are already familiar with, that helps, you know, with the learning curve to get them started. And you also brought up a great point to always think about like longevity of an LMS, because you're going to spend a lot of time creating a course. You want to make sure that, you know, it's not going to be something that changes within
Yes.
6 months to a year. So, and it seems like, you know, with us, with universities, we get different programs that we can use. And as soon as you learn it, it's something new. So longevity is a big factor. But I wanted to ask, I thought you did a great job just on the slides that you showed of organizing the course. I think that, you know, right there, if it's organized well, that will either, you know, have people to be engaged and interested, or they'll get frustrated. And so did you do any usability testing when you first created the course with potential volunteers or colleagues, just to kind of go through and use the course like somebody would as a student to get feedback? And if you did or didn't, why or why not?
I did within my own office, so I sent it around to the other agents to check it out and let me know what they felt about it. And from their situation, they said it seemed to work well. And I'd gotten a lot of feedback before from students. I know that they are from high school students. I do see a lot of parables between master gardeners and high school students. So I was like, well, I've used it before, and I've played around with how to manage that well with those students. So when I checked it with the other agents in my office, just to see how well they could navigate it, to make sure everything was working properly, and to review through some of the videos to make sure there weren't sound issues. So I did get help from that level. I didn't extend it out to my volunteers, which they could also be a great beta test resource to send something out and let them give you feedback on it beforehand if things aren't easy to use. I didn't utilize them at that point, but I did check with other agents first to make sure it was working properly and how they felt about it. I do feel it a lot in trialing a lot of these systems about 6 years ago. We did find that a lot of them were very, very similar. And we did it with students when we were in, we tried 3 different ones with our students when I was a teacher to see how they worked. But even students had the same technology, and it definitely is trying it with different situations of volunteers too. I definitely want to look at how our volunteers will work with computers, because some do have different levels of the ability with computers. So, so yes, I did try it with the agents, but I didn't get a chance to really run with the volunteers. Once I started this and went through the process of getting the LMS and starting the program, I was also under the deadline of my master's project, so then I had to really get it going to make sure I had good data or decent data to go into that as well.
Yeah, we're all familiar with, balancing many plates at once. And I had another question too about in your course format, you have the modules and you sort of broke it up into lectures that you realized 45 minutes was a long time, and now you're recommending 3, 5, and 10-minute chunks. You have required readings, suggested readings, discussion boards, tests, assignments. I know maybe your analytics changed a little bit, but did you get any feedback on what the people taking the class was their preferred method of learning, or out of those tools, what they liked the best?
I did get a lot more of people who wanted basically were watching the lecture and then participating in the forums afterwards. The assignments were a little hit and miss because some of those you'll see are more about going out and actually checking your yard. So some people, I did see also some people's interest in certain topics weren't there, which I think I did see a big drop off between after vegetable gardening and then you went to turf care. I think a lot of people wanted to end at vegetable gardening. I should probably put that one at the end because of the interest. But overall, I didn't hear much back. I said my survey didn't have a lot of good feedback with a limited amount of people who did complete it. But for my master gardeners who worked through the course and the ones who did give me feedback, basically they did say they really liked the forums, they liked the discussions they were able to have on there, and they did enjoy the lectures, just as some of them went long. And it's just good practice after I did some more research and actually took some more coursework on online learning through the university. I found out that chunking helps with people's attention spans and things like that a lot more. It's much easier to sit down and watch something for 10 minutes, go do something else, and come back to it than it is to have to pause it and go through. And yeah.
Thank you. Catherine's asking if you receive notification when someone posts in the forum.
Yes. So I'm going to back up on the presentation real quick to show the Schoology. So what happens is it's almost like Facebook. So whenever someone posts on the forum or posts a question, it'll come up in the top right corner.
Wayne, do you need me to go back? I was typing in the chat box, so I think I've got
sorry.
the mouse right now. So you might be able to go back a few slides. There you go.
So up here, there's a little mail symbol, and there's a contact symbol too for the right next to my name. There's a section where basically there's a notification. It would pop up and it'll say 1, 2, 3, kind of like Facebook. Whenever you get a notification, if you have memories or something like that, those pop up there so you can check to see what people had done during the day. So sometimes you click on it and be like 8 new forum posts have happened since you last checked it, or you have a message from this person with this question. So it'll let you know when someone messages or when someone submits a form. So you don't need it. So if it's in the middle of the week, you can go on real quick, log in, look to see if there is anything you need to do, and then move on instead of having to go in and check every single place where it could be an issue, where someone may have a question or comment. So it did give me that feedback.
All right, so we have a few more questions coming into the chat box, and that's great. And if anyone has suggestions of other tools that you've used, go ahead and put those in the chat box too, so everyone can learn from maybe some other things that you've utilized. But a few of the other comments and questions: have you found any good ways to get the students to stay engaged in an online discussion board when it's not a requirement for a grade as in a 4-credit class?
Yes, that's something, basically I would just say what I put out there was I put in the question and I would say like, okay, so when you post, I want you to I would put the same guidelines you would for a 4-credit class, where I would say, please post and then respond to 2 other people's comments. And I always had it set up so no one else's comments would show up until they've actually posted. But overall, there's not much out there to actually have them, how to get them to really stay engaged. Since you're not grading this, they're not getting a certification out of it. It is a lot more difficult to get them to jump into that. It could be something where you consider having some sort of a carrot, whether it's a certificate and a graduation ceremony for some sort of program, or if you participate in everything, including the forums, then you get your free class, free pollinator house, things like that at the end. But overall, I haven't found much that's actually but if they start building in the kind of that online community, it could be great. Or I feel like the forums might be really popular when you're having the in-person classes to kind of bridge that gap between the classes. So if you're doing a flipped classroom, it could be a great option for people to share the information and find out answers. And I think this could work well if you're doing a flipped Master Gardener course, because then you could require that as part of the class. Then there is something you can kind of hold over their heads and say, like, well, make sure you discuss in your forums to make sure you're, so you can complete the course and things like that.
Yeah, one of the things that I give people that go through a certification or complete a class or something like that is we really stress scouting and the use of integrated pest management. So I always buy the inexpensive jeweler's loops online and give those out as gifts, and people really love those. And I think you can get them for maybe $6 a piece, but it's just something for their effort and work. And then hopefully they'll use them in their landscapes to identify, pests or problems correctly.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I want to go back to something you said earlier where you talked about how there was a lot of engagement in the vegetable gardening module, but after that, it kind of tapered off. And that reminded me of something that I had heard a presenter say a few years ago. And he said that interest in domain is very important to drive engagement. So as Extension, we often think that we have an idea of what people need to learn, and it could be very different from actually what they want to learn. And so I think, like, if we as extension agents create online training, we really need to consider our audience. And, for Master Gardeners, we have a core group of topics that they must learn in order to do well in their role. But that could be very different from a homeowner who needs to learn about vegetable gardening or pruning techniques. And so really consider the audience, because that will help with your engagement, and make sure that the topics are things that people are interested in, because they will stick to it in some cases if it has a high interest in that domain. All right, and then we have another question from Courtney. Is there any worry that students who take the course online wouldn't be able to complete the required service hours thereafter?
Yes, I've gotten that whenever I've brought up the idea of an online Master Gardener course. I feel like I get that seems to be one of the big comments about, well, if someone can't come during a class period during the day, then how are they going to be able to actually fill their hour requirement? And I think overall I think this can definitely be a tool. I like the idea of using a hybrid course a little bit more, so they are having that interpersonal communication in the Master Gardener program. Because I know with my volunteers, a lot of it is having great interest in the knowledge and wanting to help, but also it is the friendships they build and things like that. So if you go completely online, I think you may have some issues with people not really feeling engaged with it, getting the knowledge, and then wanting to walk away from the program, which I think happens in our in-person classes too. So I think if their schedule is tight, if they're working full-time, they have children, they have outside responsibilities where they're going to struggle finding time for hours during the week when a lot of volunteer opportunities may happen, then it may be difficult to serve them and have them able to get those hours. However, I do run into audience who've been really interested in the idea of doing an online or hybrid course when I've brought it up with individuals, because they say that, well, I'm a nurse and I work 3 days a week, or I work 4 days a week and I have these other times, but I can't guarantee I can have off on a Wednesday for 8 to 10 weeks in a row. So sometimes you may be able to capture this audience who can be great volunteers, but just can't commit to that set schedule of 1 day a week, which I know is traditionally what a lot of people do for Master Gardener trainings. So I think it depends on kind of screening those people at the application process, see really if they could complete the hours, they have the time to do so. But I do have Master Gardeners who work full-time, and the agent who was in the county prior to me did do an evening and weekend course where they were teaching one night a week and then on a Saturday, which I haven't done yet. So to train them, and we do have a few of those Master Gardeners have stayed on and are completing their hours and completing a lot of hours. However, it's just their scheduling, they take on a lot more of their weekend responsibilities, and they come up for festivals and things like that, or they try to I have one who takes a lot of vacation time right around our fair to help out. So it really depends on the individual. I know that could happen where people are just getting the information and leaving, but I think really having that, possibly even giving them a carrot of saying, like, if you complete the online course and you paid this much for the class, you get a refund of a certain portion of it after you've completed your hours and things like that.
Yep, good points. And I want to ask you, Wayne, I know you mentioned when you showed the course format, you talked about how you upload an MP4 file. But when I hear that, I think about, okay, there were probably a lot of steps in a process that you did to upload an MP4 file. So could you talk a little bit about how your final MP4 file, like briefly tell us what you did? Did you create the PowerPoint presentation, write a script, annotate it, get the photos, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, all of my presentations were narrated PowerPoints. So basically I would take either a pre-existing presentation and adapt it, or start with a fresh one, build the PowerPoint out, kind of go through and get my notes down for a script, and then in that process also figure out what pictures I had, what pictures I could use and pull them in, how I wanted to do those. And then I would basically record over top with narration using PowerPoint Mix. There is still an option on PowerPoint where you can record narration, but it doesn't have as many options, so it's a little more difficult and doesn't allow you to annotate and screen capture everything you do. So I'm looking on something new to use for that option, for that process. But basically, so I went through, narrated it, and then the actual upload was pretty easy because PowerPoint Mix was able to basically automatically save it as a video. And then I would just, it was like uploading a file on any website on Schoology. So you go through and say you want to add a video or audio file, you would click that section, you'd get a drop down, and then you could basically just upload the file. Uploading took a while. I think sometimes for some of these it took 3 or 4 minutes to actually upload the file fully, and then you had to make sure it really was on there the correct way, to make sure there wasn't a lapse in signal or something during that time, lacking connection. So you would have to go back and check it. But overall, uploading it wasn't that bad. It was just the creation can be a little daunting when you're having to build something to cover a 45-minute topic. But we do have a lot of things that we've already, as agents, we always have things we already have done. And then it's just a simple thing of trying to adapt it and then narrate over it what we already know to get it to where how we want it to fit. I found that a lot of my time in narration was going back and re-listening to it and finding out that I said or I said the same thing repeatedly, just not really trying to follow a script, but then I kind of go off script and I have to go and re-record it because they didn't like the way it sounded and things like that.
All right, well, any other comments or suggestions or questions? Oh, we have an idea for a future presentation. Sharon would love to hear how other programs do EMG training, topics, hours, online versus in-person. That's a great suggestion. And programming ideas that increase the presence of extension in a more urban environment, or ideas for outreach to underserved communities. Excellent suggestions. I'll make a note of that. And when we have a webinar next year, we're going to have a presentation on specific to improving your help desk training. Maybe we can integrate that first point into that, and I can send you all some messages ahead of time to get some ideas for that presentation, and it can be more of a discussion. So thank you, Sharon. I appreciate that. And I'll make a note of that and try to reach out to a few people. Also, if anyone has ideas of other tools that you've used for online learning and even screencast software, send me a quick email. I've used these tools and I will put everything together and post it on the extension website. Let me go ahead and move forward to our closing slides. I really appreciate everyone being on the call today. We're going to record this webinar and post it on the YouTube channel, and then I'll post the presentation, and if you all send me suggestions, I'll put that on the Create site and send that out to you as well. Any other questions or comments for Wayne? All right. I really appreciate you, Wayne, talking to us about your successes and challenges, and even giving us the code to go into your Schoology program and just play around with it and figure out if that would be something that would be useful for us. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so encourage other Extension Master Gardener coordinators to join the community of practice. And again, we'll post a recording after we close the meeting. And thank you all for being on the call today. All right, Wayne, I hope you have a good week, and I hope everyone has a great holiday. And Happy New Year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone.